and experiences over the last, 25, 30 years. And in all that, a few things have stood out. So I'm going to try and share some of those things in relation to health, diet, and relationships. And the background music is a mix that I made maybe 15 years ago. Maybe 10, 12, 10 years ago. Yeah, maybe 8 to 10 years old. And yep. So this is the background.
That made me a different human being than my friends among the quality who believe that those forests will be voted for and so to speak of heaven, the cannibal spirits that dwell in the north end of the world, spirits that have to engage in their homicide. Now to begin.
Hey. Took a little bit of moving around. Can you hear me okay? Okay, cool. Cool. Hey, Rich. Okay. And thank you very much for having me here to speak. I'm gonna minimize this here so I can share some stuff with you all today. So, no, I'm sharing it. It's thank you. So, my background is a little bit different than most people's in my experience. As a result, I have some advantages that, as a result of me being unbiased in a certain nationalistic manner, I don't have, I grew up in Australia and I grew up in America. And when I was in America, first, I started by going to schools that were Waldorf schools, and these are free schools in terms of they're student-led communities. In terms of how you want to educate yourself, you really get to invest in that and kind of go for it. As a result, I learned that the world is something that I'm a part of, and that within this world, we have the capabilities to create new things and to do what we will with energies. Now, this confers a lot of responsibility, and along with it, a lot of power to manifest things that, generally speaking, people do not feel it is their place or their capability to do. So in 6th grade, I came back to the United States from Australia, living next to farms and watching an entire forest get cut down across the street, the dirt road from my home, and housing get put in for literally for miles and miles and miles. Seeing this, and then coming to Los Angeles and living in the inner city, I got another vantage, and several, but some of the main ones were recognizing that just because something is different doesn't make it bad or wrong in the ways you might assume. And in Los Angeles, I learned how to become strong and how to see in the cracks in the concrete that the dandelions are growing in the cracks in the concrete and the grass, and that the human spirit and the spirit of nature, they don't die just because you cover them with some concrete or a road or what. The earth's going to bounce back just fine. It's us and what we're creating for ourselves that becomes important. So what's the world that we want to live in? Do we want to live in a world surrounded by concrete and having to ask somebody for food? Or do we want to live in an Eden where there's food everywhere and we don't have to ask for food, so we can spend our time doing other more important things like meditation and yoga, developing our health, concentrating on learning how to travel at light speed or leave the planet? These are the kind of things, if we're going to focus on these and we want them to be realities, we have to focus our collective spirit on them. We can't just have one person we dedicate to figuring out the spiritual thing, and then they'll just figure out the spiritual thing. We'll go to a workshop, we'll be fine. Monday, we'll go back to work. As good as that might sound. So, in my travels, I started to consider, what is health? Yeah. I do. I have some music in the background. I'll turn it down. All right, thank you. Okay, so where this starts for me is I have a system that I'm going to share. This is a personal system I've developed, and it's basically a way of evaluating the value of something in context, because I feel we have a lot of ways to go and a lot of different opinions as to the best ways to do that. How do we gauge what's the best way to go about exploring a new reality that we haven't done yet? You know, so we have to have some standards. The system that I've taken, and this is just a personal, this can be done in any way, a number of ways. And you can use any system really as a reference. You can use the 10 Commandments, you can use the 4 Agreements, you can use the Constitution, whatever you want, as long as you're pretty consistent within that document for everybody, you know, and you take out the parts that that give benefits to some over others. As long as it's a fair system, for the most part, you can use any one you want. But how to tell if it's effective? This was my question, because I've seen a lot of agreements that work really well for some people and not as well for others. And so how do we gauge which one's going to work best if we haven't done it yet? So the chakra system is a metaphor that I'm using to reference the 7 primary relationships we have with the world. And if you think about it in terms of classical chakra references, you've got your root chakra, which is survival, which is, do we have enough food to eat today? Are we concerned about that being a problem in the near future? Because if so, we can freeze to death, we can starve to death. You know, do we have our survival covered to the point where we really feel like solid in that? And that this also relates to emotional roots, family relationships, birth trauma, etc. But I'm looking at it just as a metaphor right now for, say, first level awareness. Do I have a place to sleep? Am I safe? Do I have food? You know, these are fundamental things. Now, if we have those, and we can extrapolate this to community, and we're going to. But if we have that, then we can start to think about second chakra. Well, okay, now that I know that I'm okay, you know, maybe I want to have sex. and procreate. Maybe I want to, I want to have the food kind of taste good, not just be any food. We get into these different levels of awareness of our own lives, and then willpower comes into play. I think around third chakra, it's like we can craft, we can create, we can manipulate our environment. We're not subject to it in the sense that it's about to dominate and destroy us. No, we figured that out. We've got these building blocks in play. Now I can take the materials at hand and I can actually start to do something new with them. Or at least I can use my will. Maybe we're getting to creationism, we're getting to 6th and 7th chakra. But 3rd chakra, we have willpower. So I can, you tell me to take that cart from over here to over there, I can tie the cart to my back and I can make sure that I drag it over there. I may not be smart enough to put wheels on it. That's the higher chakra stuff. So then we get into 4th chakra, and that's the heart space. And where we can be safe enough and have our stuff covered enough that we can even consider being emotionally healthy as something that we can give time or attention to. Got to remember, our context is thousands and thousands of generations of people living, kind of honoring the people that came before us, because they survived and it was hard to survive. So a lot of the things that we now have the luxury of kind of entertaining, how do I feel? Geez, I feel this way or that way. Do people like me? Do they not like me? This stuff before, like several hundred years ago, we go back a few generations, and we'll notice that our grandparents and great-grandparents had a very different view of marriage, so to, for example, where it's utilitarian. And, or that you're kind of relegated to a choice from a region. There's only like 13 eligible people in your town, and nobody's ever left. It's like, these kinds of things make a really big difference. And when I'm looking at our communities that we're trying to develop now, I'm thinking, okay, so after we've been in this community for 2 generations or 3, let's just say 1.5, we've got like a child who's raised in the culture. The problem with that, what I've seen in these cultures, is that the children grow up and they're bored. And they're like, why am I being inhibited from exploring all of these amazing new technologies? I want to go on my Rumpelspringer, or whatever it's called, my journey out of the community to go see the world, and then come back and bring back what I've learned from outside to help improve the world that is my family or my clan or my tribe. We're working together to make this thing work, is the point. Now, 4th chakra, we get the heart, we get to, in a lot of ways, and that's the home, the hearth, that we have a safe space that's also nurturing, not just there and savage and traumatic necessarily. And 5th chakra, we begin to articulate and differentiate between the different dynamics within our household or our community, and see, this is more effective than that, and this is more effective than that, if we want to get this particular thing done. I hope I'm going at a pace that's reasonable, and please feel free to get a piece of paper and just write down your own references for your chakras. So if you look at each chakra, and you can look up online and pull up a general chakra diagram that will tell you what the fundamental kind of metaphoric relationships are for each chakra. Go through that and associate for yourself what for you denotes each chakra. And do it with the reference. Maybe you want to do it your own way first, and that will give you insight into your own ideas and what you value and don't value in certain ways. Once we get to the 6th and 7th chakras, 7th chakra for me, like 6th, is consciousness of self within a context. So when I get to the 6th chakra, I'm not just speaking to say things so that I feel like I look good. That's 5th chakra, posturing. I'm saying things because it has a significance in relation to my self-image, or because I'm emotionally driven. But it has to do with lower chakra motivations. And at best, fifth chakra motivations, which are intellectual and not experiential. Now, when we get to sixth, we recognize that we are one of many vehicles for words and stories. And that who tells the story is less important, or is kind of arbitrary. I don't want to say importance, applying importance is kind of a trap. But I do want to say that when you realize that anyone could say what you just said, does that make you feel bad or good? See, we start to get into these ideas of, am I representing something that's timeless and true, regardless if I say it or you say it or someone else says it? Or am I saying something to push people back and forth to get things? Maybe if I say it in the right way, I'll be charming and someone will give me money and then I can use that money to buy food. Or is this a thing, I want to inform people because I feel like they can utilize the support, and if they hear this, it might help them to live their lives in a more effective manner and be happier. Because ultimately, when you have the vantage from a higher, let's say, enlightenment, so the seventh chakra vantage would correlate roughly with the idea of enlightenment. And what that means is you're not a selfish narcissist. Essentially, I'm just not just all about myself. I can actually look at a greater picture of like, okay, how would this thing, whatever it is, affect everyone? And actually be honest with myself. That's enlightenment to some degree. I mean, I'm not going to say that's all enlightenment is, but let's say that's a byproduct of enlightenment, is that you have that experience of being a part of a body and recognizing that if this body dies, whether I am the liver or the heart, I go with it at the same time. Like, the heart attack happens, the liver's done, doesn't have a place anymore. So then we get into we are all one, and this idea, and it's very easy to say, we are all one, love is everything, and these types of what can sometimes become platitudes. These ideas are very real, but they're rooted in the fact that not only are we all part of the same body, whether we're looking at it from the community standpoint, or the family standpoint, or the national standpoint, you could think of these as different levels of chakra also. You've got your root chakra, which is you. Then you go into the second chakra, which is willpower. It's duality, two people, you have babies. So then you got little family. Then as you go up in the chakras, you eventually get to like extrapolating your family to the environment that your family's in, with community, with other families, and then extrapolating that into families and families together in a community, interacting with other communities. And then we go up into villages and states and nations, and then back to one again at the global body, where we're all really sharing the same air ultimately, the same oceans ultimately. We're sharing those things, the environments that we have to share. It's just some people are given permission to do things, or they just take it, that we don't all get to agree on. But basically, this one body, we're sharing it. Now, we can take this down if we want to look at health and wellness. And for me, what it really comes down to is act locally, think globally. I agree with that. I think that's a very wise vantage, is to be aware of what's going on for other people also. And know that what I'm doing here is what I can do based upon where I am. So if I live next to the farmer's market, I can go to the farmer's market. Yay, farmer's market! If I can't get to the farmer's market without spending $20 on gasoline, maybe I'm going to the Safeway or the Trader Joe's and I'm buying organic if they have any. We're all subject to our own circumstances and conditions. And that being said, there are better choices for us if we think about long-term effects, especially when it comes to health and wellness. And then if we're healthy, then we're happy. Because if you're really healthy, you're a happy person. There's nothing messing with you, making you feel crappy. That's basic health. You just don't feel shitty. You don't get stressed at people. Your temperament is the key for being able to tell how healthy you are, in my opinion. One of the great tellers. Is it the person in a rush? Do they get frustrated easily? Do they snap and get nasty? That means that you have something wrong inside you if you snap and get nasty. You're impatient. You're not in a position to be able to relate in a healthy, in an optimally healthy manner. Because ideally, I want to not respond and I don't want to react when I have a child. If I'm going to have a healthy relationship, bring it back down to the beginning. Do I snap at myself? Because if I snap at other people, I'm snapping at myself, probably because I learned it from somebody else that snapped at me in the first place. So I can either take on this karma, this habit, because all karmas are habits that we incorporate into our lives or that get incorporated, and we take them for granted. We identify with them rather than, and this is where culture comes in again. Cultures are a bunch of habits that we take for granted. Because I'm a black person, of course I eat pig's feet. Pickled pig's feet. Or of course I talk in a certain way. Nigga, what you talk about? Man, that fool, man, motherfucker didn't even... Yeah, so now I'm black because I can talk like that, right? Or Mexican, eh? Shut up, eh? Vato, ¿qué pasó, eh? You know, am I more Mexican now? These habits define us in a lot of very significant ways, and not just what we say necessarily, how we say it, the accent what the accent puts into us, that we are vibing with this way of being that has a lot of other writers with it. So I just bring these things up to denote the fact that we can change these things and choose what works for us and what doesn't. And when it comes to health, the way to tell if something's healthy, first of all, your temperament. Are you happy? If you're not happy, if you're not feeling fulfilled and happy with your life and feeling ready to go do things, then yeah, you are unhealthy in some way. And it may be that you're just old and you've already eaten enough sugar to burn out some of your stuff, so it really doesn't work as well. You know, that happens. Cause and effect is not something that can necessarily just be reversed. And I think we can strengthen our bodies, and that's what they're made for, and that's how they're made to work. So as we acclimate ourselves to healthier diets, we become more and more healthy and strong. I have full-blown Lyme's disease. I got diagnosed years and years ago, and I knew I had it before then because when I got bit, my son found the tick on my neck, and I removed it. And I didn't remove it correctly. So I finally got tested about 4 or 5 years ago, and or 6, and realized like that I was positive for Lyme's. Now, I have been working with Lyme's patients and with cancer patients and hospice, in hospice with people who have special needs and who are on the verge of death, and oftentimes. In that experience, I realized a couple of things. One, when it's your time to go, it's your time to go. Arguing just makes you feel kind of crappy. You can do your best. And sometimes you can kind of come through something and you can fix the damage that has been done. And most often not, because eventually we're all going. So what becomes important then is the quality of the life that you have to look back on when it's your time to go. When you get to the end, are you bitter? Are you carrying around angst and anger and disgust with the world? Because you get to live with that for the last 10 years or 15 years of your life. So ideally, we want to have beautiful feelings and thoughts and emotions with us, so that when we're at that last moment in our lives, we're looking back. And what we see is a wondrous, amazing journey that we're so lucky to have been on. Now, I've learned this by interacting with people who are at that point, and usually they will be the most grateful and gracious, even if they're at that point in immense amounts of pain, physical pain, and unable to walk, you know, things like that. You'll find that there's a point at which you come to terms with life, and it's on life's terms, and the sooner you do it, the better. You come to terms and you realize, hey, I'm lucky to be here. Thanks for the body that I got on loan. It's going to get taken back. I hope I didn't screw it up too much by putting a bunch of crap in it that's going to poison all the worms that are not going to get to eat my body. Because you put me in a casket now, and then pump me full of drugs first, so I can't even go back into the natural system anymore. How's that for fun? So now we have green burials, which is very cool. I highly recommend everybody looks into it. And get planted with some trees in your body and have them grow up, and the nutrients will turn into fruit that people will eat. That's a way to give something back after death. You know, just be a part of the thing. So when we come back to diet and health and trying to choose a good diet, I'm just going to give a couple of things that have really rung true for me. I grew up with an awareness of food as a result of being macrobiotic and studying traditional Chinese medicine and wild edible plants, and not as a result of my monkish ethos, which is to harm none. I have made sure to try to harm none, and so the closest I get is buying secondhand items that were made in a Chinese sweatshop, or that have animal leather in them or something like that. But I make sure that I don't support the primary businesses. That's my main investment in my life on that tip. And I try to run a diesel car so I can run biodiesel when it's not too cold. And I'm working towards, just like all of us, we're all working towards doing better with our diets, whether those diets be media, whether those diets be our consumption in terms of what we're taking into the world day to day, what it takes for us to live our life, what's the plastic waste from what we ate today, did we use a car, did someone have to go to war to get the oil, or is that the oil that was fracked from, that area now where they have fire coming out of the faucets? These are real questions that need to be answered by all of us, and in our own time, we move our way as we find out, oh, this is supporting fracking in my own neighborhood. I gotta stop supporting fracking, even though I want to drive. That driving, oh, it's supporting the fracking here. Then the real, I think, choice at that point for us, if we're moving towards an evolutionary path, is to recognize and then do our best to change these things as we can. Obviously, we're not going from a fossil fuel-based economy to everybody's going to have solar panels on their cars, tomorrow. But I think as long as we recognize what way is moving forward and we do it personally, that's the first step. Because the technology is just not going to be there soon, to be honest. So when we're investing in these things, we're investing in our children learning from us how to survive and thrive in an environment that doesn't rely on fossil fuels. That is the real gift, that the people around us are going to have someone to ask questions to, that we're going to have a little bit of a head start. It's not going to be much. But if we start now, we can co-create basically spaceships. But these spaceships are not going out into space. Mars is not more hospitable than the desert. It's less hospitable than the desert. And you got to ship the glass up to make the dome. We can make the domes here already. So if we're going to do that, we need to do it here before we start thinking we'll leave the planet. Nobody's leaving the planet. So then when we get to the social aspect of this, for me, it gets also very interesting, because what we're getting into is not so much about who's more capable necessarily. Although that's going to be a much bigger part of it when we get into this era more fully, and these things become necessary instead of just like, oh, it's an experiment, it's an interesting little aside. All it takes is gas going up from, $3 a gallon to like $6 a gallon. With all these controversies about oil right now and the pipelines and Middle East, at any moment, if there was something that went wrong, oil can go from $2.80 a gallon to $8 a gallon. And in a commuter culture, that means depression immediately. Like, we immediately go into a recession / depression where nobody can afford to get to work. Like, we're not making enough money. We can't ship the food to the big stores. So in the event that this hypothetical situation ever occurs, what's a healthy community going to look like? For me, it's going to be a bunch of people who, first of all, we've dealt with most of our ego shit in the sense that we're not really so much concerned about how is this going to make me look tomorrow is more important than I need to make sure to get this done to save the community, you know, so that we have the food. Or am I going to get stoned today, or am I going to plant the garden? Geez, it's a hard choice. No, maybe I'll smoke and plant the garden. But, you know, working these things out and then working sideways with one another, we're going to have to acknowledge that each person has their own ethos. And this is going to be the most multicultural group of people you can imagine, aliens and shit. We're going to have people from all over, from all walks of life, living together on basic means. So if someone feels entitled or like is like, oh, a pageant, you know, like this is take care of me, pamper me kind of culture, they're going to have a hard time. But they're going to be welcome to have that hard time, because you can't kick anybody out just arbitrarily. Like, someone's got to break a law to be kicked out of the community. You have to transgress a person at that level, because everybody's going to be useful. Everybody's going to be doing a key thing, because there's only going to be one or two people doing each thing, you know, that are experts in each thing. And then we all do the work to maintain the property. Next level, we have to get that property so that it can make money in this current economy. And I feel like doing that, if we invest in food, we're investing in our future, and we can start to integrate with a community of other people who are also investing in food and growing it and how to grow it. And that seems to me a very wise investment for a community that's trying to live without depending upon Safeway and Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. Packed like plastic bags on all of our vegetables, and those stores are going to get sold out first. And then it's going to cost too much. It's going to cost twice as much for their food because they're shipping it, and that takes gasoline. So if gasoline costs $8 a gallon, that carrots that just got shipped in from Mexico suddenly cost 3 times as much. You know, I'm hyper theorizing, but you get what I'm saying. It's going to be more effective to have groups of people who are loosely connected, where we have farms and ways of making money in this economy, and after this economy fails, we still have what we need, the food. We can make bread, we can crush wheat, we can harvest grain effectively, we can create miso in casks, and we've maintained this knowledge and that we have it to work with. These are the main things that I've been concerned about and studying. And I feel like we're at a point now where this is going to happen. And this is the last thing I'm going to share. I had a vision in 1997, and I had an experience where it was kind of revealed to me. I don't know how to explain it, but I just had this, I was question and answer session with just God or whatever, and said, hey, what's going on? And what was revealed to me was that, and this was, you got to understand, this was before the internet was a thing. This is 97. We just started. It was revealed to me that what's going to happen is the internet's going to come into place. It's a neural network that transcends our individual abilities to cognize. It's a living thing. It breathes in its own way. And that it's going to become, in some ways, us interacting with the internet makes us think about people far away and to imagine them, and in different ways than we used to, and to communicate and be aware of them. This is turning on our awareness, psychic awareness, if you want to call it that, where we can remote locate, we're working on these things in our minds that, you know, nobody in like South Dakota was thinking about who was in Australia 400 years ago. That wasn't just a daily thought, but now I'm thinking friends in France, Italy, Australia, and people of like minds and certain resonance harmonics of what we're thinking about. This is creating a culminating effect that's going to result in, perhaps, the premonition that I got was that what's going to happen is we are all going to become activated, whether we like it or not. So if you have hateful things in your head, if you have deceitful things in you or hateful things in you, or I do, then those things basically sit with me, but I'm exposed and everybody can see it. That's what's going to happen for everyone. So it's very important for us to cultivate a true heart and a sincere manner of interacting, because we're not going to have a choice soon, and everybody, it will be very evident to everyone who's who and how we think and what we believe. And it's already happening. I'm seeing through Facebook and these media, online medias, that our lives are open books now. So there's going to be a certain point at which there are no secrets in the same way as there used to be. And at that point, we want to have cultivated a way of being that is pure, sincere, and holistic in a way that can support itself. And for me, that was what I've been talking about, the communities, and I call it communalism. And each group gets to pick a set of agreements, and what we agree upon, anybody who comes into the group, they have to agree to become a part of the group. If they break an agreement, we have a council, and then they can be ejected from the group based upon whether or not we feel they broke the agreement. Or there can be other things that we do depending on the community. But this allows for each community to have its own theme, its own types of agreements, because some people might want to be in a pansexual community where there's a whole open thing of sorts that I don't understand. And then maybe I want to be a part of a family community that doesn't have guns and is vegan, you know. And so each community will have its own agreements. And then we network these communities so that we can trade services and support ourselves amongst with each other, you know, given that other systems, governmental and corporate systems, fail us. And I think that that's what this movement is about, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. And I'm going to continue to do my work in learning about how other people are doing these things and how we can be effective in co-creating these types of communities in the future for all of us, so that our children and our children's children have something worth living in. Because like I said, taking glass to Mars, not going to happen. You know, maybe that's 13 families out of 60 million. We need to figure out what to do here. And we have to do it together, and we don't have much time. So I'm hoping that, you know, this is a good step for us to be able to start to really work on these technologies and implementing them and seeing how viable they are. Because, you know, once we don't have access to the fossil fuel economy anymore, we won't be able to make these parts for as cheap as we can now. This is a limited time. We have a window. We need to make all the pieces for our eco-communities now with the 3D printers and the CNC machines and laser cutters and water jet cutters. We got to use those now, because at a certain point it's going to be unreasonable for us to be able to afford such a thing. So that being said, if anybody's here and would like to ask any questions, I'd like to open it up, and you know, if anything I said resonated with you, I'd love to clarify. Hey, hey. Thank you. Hey, Destiny. Nice to see you. Long time no see. Yeah, right. It's going to start going out like that. No, that's crazy, man. You've been traveling nonstop since I met you, I think. Pretty much. Yeah, I'm traveling. I can't help it. It's like residual traveling. Yeah. Mm.
Funding. They can go to newearthnewyournow.org. There's all sorts of different summits that are going to be happening. We're happy to sponsor. We're happy to be affiliates of summits, of gatherings, of festivals. We're happy to bring them together with other festivals, bring them together with other collaborations. I spent a week at like this little community that has a fruit farm that's here in Hawaii, and I'm also connecting to one of the earlier speakers, Haley, with some people who have property here, who were working very strongly, me, Doran, ASC, to bring everyone together. Me and Doran are working very closely with New Earth Nation. We were fortunate to have Sasha on yesterday. I don't know if you saw, but we're going to be working very closely with all of their projects and cross-pollinating, as Michelle Lightworker says, who will be speaking tomorrow. So we're all of the speakers here. I feel like the summit is like this place where we can connect and share with more people, not just with each other, so they can see how we're coming together.
And I think it's important that we're sharing with each other. I think for me, this is more about us connecting with one another and having a chance to get everybody's blueprints. It's not like 150 million people are coming to watch this. This for me is like me get to hear you guys. And later. But this is like us getting to hear each other out and see who sticks around and listens and checks everybody's stuff out, and like how we interact and ask questions. And then down the road, we're developing. This is the seeds of change for what's going to be the people who are already networking and have been for decades. I mean, I know I've been doing this for decades, literally, and I'm young. So I have friends who are in their 60s and 70s that have been, in the 60s were running around defending nuclear power or attacking nuclear power plants or doing whatever they're doing, like protesting and really being involved, and are still involved in like Rainbow Family and stuff. So it should be interesting to see how we start coming out with this as a group, coordinated. That's a very exciting thing.
I'm just wanting to share with you that Deb said thank you so much. That was a great transmission, and she's so happy that you were able to get on. Thank you so much for the support, Deb. We're looking forward to connecting more with you. We're going to need to move it on because, excitingly enough, we're going to be having our Divine Masculine and Feminine Rising Summit published in Lightworker Reflections magazine. And also I'm needing to write an article to have the ASC shared. So if you get a chance within the next hour or so, Doran, to send me some details. I think both Dakota and Leela are too busy at the moment, and I would love to be able to have the ASC. And if you can put some stuff together for Source, I'm going to actually get Michelle to put Source Network in her magazine as well. So put some stuff together, and I'm finishing an article off. But I'm so glad that we got to connect with both those who are viewing, all of those that are on. It's going to be a powerful day tomorrow. I feel all of the nooks and crannies are ironed out. I'm actually hoping that some of our